Thank you for following this series with the Western Journal. This is the final part of my sit-down interview with General Michael Flynn. Enjoy.
I mean, we haven't talked about foreign policy yet, okay? And we don't need to today. Maybe it's another time. But we haven't talked about the foreign world that exists that America has to withstand.
Yeah.
And the foreign ideologies that exist that America has to withstand, meaning communism.
Right.
Communism is a very powerful political ideology that exists. I've said this publicly. Islamism is a political ideology that exists.
100%.
That's why they have something called Sharia law. So, but you have communism that exists. You have China or Russia that are communist nations, and they believe their ideology is the preferred ideology. Well, guess what, America? Guess what? Those 25 to 35 million Democrats that vote blindly, there are communist elements in our government today. And they're not just a couple of sprinkled in the House of Representatives. They are all over our federal government. They're all over our education system. Communist, card-carrying communist elements. And they go all the way down to school boards. They go all the way down to county seats and county school boards. That didn't happen in the last 4 years because of Donald Trump.
Right.
Donald Trump's got his failings, and I'll give you that. But that man loves this country, as I do. And I will tell you that we will wane. America will wane if Americans who believe in this country don't wake up. And before we get below that edge of that hot pot, we still have one hand on the edge and enough strength to climb out of that pot and then live, right? And live as a nation that we want to be proud of. So I can go out and do the kinds of things that I want. I can say the kinds of things that I want to say. That we will lose. We will lose that, and because history tells us that we will lose that. History is the best teacher.
Yeah.
Hindsight is 2015, not 2020. It's so clear. And so, because I am passionate about this, but I'm determined about this because I do think that there's an element of our country that just blindly does things, and they're not dumb people. They're actually very smart people.
Right. They're just not engaging.
It's like start to really look at all angles of the argument and look for leaders that are willing to make the harder right decision. And don't come to you every 2 years or 4 years and say, okay, I got another handout for you. I need your vote again.
Right.
And then you go blindly voting for them. Okay? That will cause this country to wane away forever, and we will become something else, something that we are not proud of, something that we do not want to leave our children and our grandchildren with.
That's right. You had mentioned, and this is a purely defensive question on my part, because you talked about local action, you're talking about getting involved locally. Mm-hmm. And I know there is some crazy leftist out there who's going to take one sentence of that comment out of context and claim that you're calling for a coup, calling for violence, because you're calling for action.
Yeah,
they're going to take that and say, "Look, he wants us to."
And that's how they
overthrow the government.
That's how they distort. So local action has a national impact. That's how they distort. Right. And they put fear.
So give some examples. Yeah. Give some concrete examples.
For example, and the Republican Party knows this. The Republican National Party knows this. There's thousands and thousands of unfilled volunteer and governmental positions across this country. There are unfilled school board positions, right? Yep. In counties across this country. There are school board seats that should be placed at risk because I want somebody who actually believes in Civics 101 that should be being taught instead of critical race theory, right? I mean, that's my belief. Yep. So when I say local action, my thing is stop complaining about up in Washington, D.C., or even in whatever state's capital you're from, right? Stop complaining about those people, because where you can have an impact, where an individual can have an impact, is right in their hometown. Right in your hometown. Get involved.
Yeah.
Go volunteer. Go be a precinct volunteer. On any given election day, a precinct volunteer may have the most power in this nation. What we saw up in I think it was Michigan, where they were precinct volunteers were putting cardboard up on the windows because they didn't want anybody to see inside the windows. Those are precinct operators, right? So they had a power over transparency. And because the vote in Michigan wasn't just the vote in Michigan, it was the vote for the country. It was a vote for something.
National vote.
It was a national vote. So local action that has a national impact means stop complaining. Get involved in your local communities. Go choose either to help somebody because you like them, right? And get involved, or run yourself for office.
Yeah. No
more complaining about those people and what they're doing. Get involved. That's my thing.
That's great. So, on a related note, one more quote I'm going to read at you.
Sure.
This is from something actually that I read because you sent it to a friend of mine who sent it to me, from Angelo Codavilla from American Greatness.
Right.
This article or op-ed. He said, whoever would lead Republican America going forward, and that's a lowercase r there, Republican America, the Republic. Going forward, must reinvigorate Donald Trump's priceless legacy, rhetorical disrespect of the ruling class. But Trump's rhetorical leadership was not sufficient. For Republican Americans to shield ourselves and restore our liberties, we must specify and explain that disrespect with regard to every part of the oligarchy. Unlike Trump, we must explain the falsehood of claims to superior knowledge and morality and build on these explanations by organizing and supporting popular acts of collective disobedience. I'm in full agreement with that statement. I think that piece that he wrote was brilliant.
Yeah. You guys should so hold your question for 1 second. But that article, you all ought to post it online because Codavilla did a really good job.
Totally going to do that.
Yeah, he masterfully navigated this idea of who we are as a nation,
right,
in a way that really presents some really tough questions that the American people have to answer.
I agree, and I think he did well crediting Trump with things that Trump did well, but also saying, well, here's where he fell short. He could have done other things, and that's my question. My concern is that for the really hardcore MAGA crowd, the unlike Trump part of what he said, that we have to go beyond Trump. We have to do what Trump hasn't done.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be hard to swallow for some people who are really just, Trump all the time. And there's a good number of people who
absolutely
love the former president that way. So, how do we communicate that effectively? And how would you, if you had to translate this into an op order and into action, how would you do that? What would you tell people to
Well, yeah, that's a one. It's a great article again by
we are going to republish that on
by Codavilla, and I think that and you should clip out kind of maybe that statement because that was one of the more powerful ideas that he presented. So where to? Where do we go?
Exactly.
And you think about because you brought in operations order, right? The kind of mission task purpose kind of order that we would give ourselves in the military to go accomplish some mission. So what's the mission really? The mission is America and making sure that America remains as the city, the shining city on the hill, right? As described in different speeches and sermons and the Bible, actually. So how does America continue to become that? Does it require Donald Trump? Well, in this moment in history, it still feels like it does. Because he actually won the last election.
And if it's not him, who is it going to be? Who's that person going to be?
So I think that and I learned this a long time ago, and you get this because you're service in the military too. But for anybody in life, you should teach children this. You learn good things and bad things, right? And what I was taught was that take away those good things, put them in your pocket, and use them in life as you go forward. Learn from the bad things, but leave them behind. But don't forget them in the future, right? So take the good, leave the bad, go forward in life, right? So what I think the shift in the country is we still need courage, okay? Courage to really be fearless in our beliefs about this country and all the things we've already talked about in terms of courage. We need accountability in our country. So it's not just build the wall, drain the swamp, throw out these trade agreements, we're not going to get involved in new wars, we're going to build up our military, those
all good things.
Yeah, all good things, right? And those are all necessary ideas to continue to promote, But now it's about really safety and security inside of our country. And it's about trust, because that then drives home this word of accountability. So courage and accountability. And then I think that there's a third word, and it's economics that comes to mind in this conversation. Because economics to a single mom with a couple of kids who's got 2 jobs, she's putting her kids into daycare every day or sending them off to school, and she's basically still using green stamps and powdered milk or something. I remember that as a kid.
Yeah.
So, but that's happening today. So accountability, because, and courage, accountability, and economics, because on the economics home front, we still want to be able to go and do the things that I feel I need to do to take care of my family, my children, and my life. Yeah. Right? Not everybody lives in Hollywood, Washington, D.C. or Wall Street, right? Most people don't. Most people live you got to come into work every day. You got your job. You got to pay your bills. You got to pay your taxes. All those kinds of things. So there's an economics, there's an accountability, and there's a courage component of those as well. So I think, where are we going from here? Well, I think in the very, very near term, we still have to resolve election 2020. I'm sorry, right? What are they hiding? What's being hidden from the
Sure.
American people? Why are they hiding? Why are they fighting so hard to hide something?
Some of that's starting.
Right.
Looks at least.
Right. It's really looking ugly. So why are they hiding? Why are they fighting to hide? You can't hide from that. Can't hide from the truth. Can't hide from the truth.
It always comes out of it.
So in the near term, we have to resolve that. So new candidates that are coming on board, local action has a national impact. New candidates that are coming on board, they ought to be talking about election integrity, because there's a lot of people in this country that don't trust our elections now.
Right about that.
So that's just the way it is. So in the near term, let's discover the truth of what happened, and then let's make the really hard decisions about what has to happen to move forward as a nation from that. Okay, let's not just say nothing to see here, or all these people that are calling the election fraudulent or stolen. Those are bad people. In fact, in some states, they're talking about arresting those people.
Yeah.
I think it's Michigan. It's crazy.
Yeah, Michigan has state police investigating.
Right. It's crazy. It's just crazy. So part of it is, what does Trump decide to do? Because he is sort of the leader he created this Make America Great movement. And it's a huge movement. Yeah. So he created it. How does he shape it going forward? Because let's say he was in the Oval Office right now and we were moving forward. Who then begins to take the con? How does this movement begin to take shape? Because Trump is a phenomenon and a force.
Yeah.
And a tsunami that came into the political life of America, and all of a sudden people are like, whoa, and he becomes the president. And now he's still he is still, he's still at the bank. He's still at the head of the banquet table, right? And he's still swaying the country. He's got to decide. President Donald J. Trump has got to decide, and he's got to decide without playing, without playing on the emotions too much, because it's a very emotional time. We're in a physical and emotional, an intellectual and a spiritual sort of war that we're in right now, and there's a lot of tension, and the tension is between the order that we need in our lives and the liberties that we expect.
Yeah.
President Trump's he's got to make some real serious decisions about what does he see as the future, not of necessarily the nation, because I would say that he wants the nation kind of like the rest of us, free and fair, constitutionally based, and we retain our liberties while we still demand order in certain aspects of our lives.
Sure.
So I think he would generally agree with that. But he's got to decide what's the direction of the Make America Great movement, because the movement hasn't gone away, and actually it's probably growing.
Yeah,
it's probably growing. So he's got to make some decisions about that, and I think he's got to make some decisions about that pretty quick. But I think that what we need in that decision-making process is we need some definition or clarity on the courage that we all need to take. And that courage is like I say, courage to get involved.
Yeah.
The accountability that we demand. The American public demands accountability. And it's just not accountability in the Department of Justice or even in a state Supreme Court. It's the accountability in this crazy election that we just had. I mean, elections have been fraudulent for 100+ years. There's plenty of evidence, plenty of precedent. It just never happened to this scale at the presidential level ever in our country. That's why we are in a place where we've never been.
Yeah.
And then the economic side of our lives, of our livelihoods. Look at some of the first things that this administration did. They killed jobs because they didn't like the Keystone Pipeline, just because he did it, right? So they killed 100,000 jobs, and then there's all the other jobs that come with that. Who knows how much it really hurt? So that's just an example of that. But so look at not only the words, but look at the actions of the people that are we the people have decided to lead our country, okay, and those actions should speak louder than words.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's a long description of Codevilla's great article, but because that is a part of that phrase that you read, that is the big $64,000 question.
Yeah.
So where does this movement head?
Where do we go now?
Where do we go now? And I think that where we go now is that new leaders have to rise. And it's not going to be the beauty queens that cross the stage of CPAC.
Yeah.
That are all going, look at me, I'm governor, or I'm senator, so-and-so. Look at me, I'm I can do this, I did that. Talk about this country. Talk about what's great about this country. Talk about the difficulties that we face. Talk about the solutions that we have. Talk about the problems that you understand, and then the kinds of ways that you have ways to solve that. Get away from the word I.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? One letter.
Yeah.
It's the most disrupting.
It's difficult. Yeah.
Word in the English language is I. Because, personally, I am sick of people that are talking about themselves, right? I want to hear people talk about this country. So that's when I'll use the word I.
Sure. So, all right, one last question for you, General. And thank you so much for all of this time you've given us.
It's great. I've enjoyed it.
Tell me what makes you most hopeful for America's future. Well, we've talked about problems, we've talked about issues, we've talked about challenges. Well, but I know you're a hopeful guy.
Yeah, I'm sort of, probably too much of an internal optimist, but, and some people say, well, I'm not an optimist, I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist. Well, I'm not sure what that means anymore because I want to be optimistic and I want to be hopeful and I want to be sort of prayerful too, because I learned from my father, there's no atheist in a foxhole,
Right,
meaning when the chips are down and you're by yourself. I say today, and I believe it firmly, that there's one thing more important than all the freedoms that we have, and that's our faith. Because they can take all your freedoms away, like they tried to take mine away, for no reason. But they could never take my faith away, and that gets back to what we talked about earlier. So why am I hopeful, or what do I see as the future of hopefulness? And one of the things that I do see is that there is a awakening at the grassroots level of this country like we have not seen in certainly in my lifetime, and I am not sure whether we've seen it in other eras of the United States of America. Maybe this awakening occurred prior to our war against England at the beginning of this country, maybe, but I'm not even sure. I think it's even stronger than that. So there's an awakening in the American psyche that says, boy, we could actually lose everything we have, right? So that awakening is really positive. The way to direct that energy, though, and this gets back to the last conversation about the mega movement, this mass movement, we have to direct positive energy towards positive things. Okay, so why I keep harping on this phrase, because it's stuck with me. Local action can have a national impact. Our individual liberties are at risk unless you decide, America, right? Unless you decide to get off your rear end, get off the couch, get off the stool, right, and move and go do something and go find out what's happening in your local community. And if you think you have the answers to everything, then, and a lot of people, sitting around these places, they argue about whatever, and they got this answer. Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? Good question.
Yeah,
go find out. And you know what? And if you find a seat that's unfilled, or if you find somebody that's really not very popular or not really good at what they're doing, then run against them. Run against them.
Yeah.
Go sign up, go find out what it takes, and go run. Go run for office. Go get involved. So now, instead of being they, you're now one of them.
Yeah.
And now you have the ability to be able to make the changes that you want to make, that you want to change, right?
And now it becomes we.
And now it's we. And now it's we, right? It's we the people.
Yeah.
So the greatest strength that we have in this country are the people of this country. Okay? The people of this country. Now, I would like to think that there is a faithfulness that crosses, that runs a fabric that sort of runs through all those people. But that's not always the case, and I'm not going to, that's being way over optimistic. That's not being realistic. But I do believe that there is a faithfulness that is part of the fabric of this country, and that's the faithfulness in who we are as Americans. That's in our DNA. We've always given to other nations. We've always given to other people. We're the most giving people on the face of the earth in the history of the planet. So we've done more for others than we should ever expect to have returned. That's biblical. I mean, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's the way I was raised as a child in my home by my father. That was his principal counsel to us all the time, right? Treat others like you want to be treated there, Michael. And I think that's the way we are. And so that's what we expect. I expect that of others. I expect you to do the same to me.
Yeah.
If you don't, then I wonder, well, what's your problem?
Yeah.
Right? And guess what? I don't deal with you anymore.
Yeah.
And if you're a politician, I'm not gonna help you. If you're a politician, I want you out. And maybe I go find a leader, or maybe I'm that leader that steps up and says, I'm going to run for office because I don't like what you're doing to my town. So that's why I'm hopeful, because the people of this country are still very much engaged, and they're becoming more and more engaged every day. And they're becoming engaged because the evil, as Williams talked about it in his article, the evil side of what happens and what is happening is evil will try to hide things on us. And I ask the question, what are they hiding? If there's nothing to hide, then what are you worried about, right? If you're hiding from the truth, that's not a good place to be, because the truth is going to come out.
Yeah.
Eventually the truth is going to come out. Always does. I am a product. I'm a product. I'm sitting here today because the truth came out.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm actually overly optimistic, because we is a much stronger word than I. And we, the people, have started to really look at ourselves and our nation and our communities and our families and our individual liberties and rights. And we're now realizing these things are at risk. But they've always been at risk. And it always has required sacrifice. It's just now we're in a place where we could lose everything. We could suddenly shift from a political ideology called a constitutional republic, small r, right? Maybe, to something that's different, towards socialism and a different type of system altogether. It's happened throughout history. So that's a fact. So it's not a conspiracy theory, right?
Yeah,
so anyway, that's the way it is. So I am very optimistic about the people of this country and the strength and the courage that I know that they still have to sacrifice, demand accountability, and expect what's best for them and what's best for their families, from an economic standpoint. So I think that that's what people want. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's your own health, your own safety and security, your own ability to live freely. But on the other hand, we're also paying for a system called a democracy, this beautiful experiment in democracy. We're paying with our hard-earned dollars to expect a little bit of order, just enough.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, stay out of my life, right? Let me do the kinds of things that I need to do that are within the morals, the ethics, and the laws of our nation, right? So anyway, I hope that answers some of your questions, right?
Fantastic. General Michael Flynn, I can't thank you enough for being here. I really appreciate all the time you've given us this morning. I know there's lots of other stuff you could be doing, but really, really appreciate you having here. Thank you again for your service. Great. Well, thank you, and thank you for your service and for opening up the Western Journal to allow me to talk to your audience, and which is a great audience too. So our pleasure. I hope you'll do some more op-eds. Yep, I will. Hopefully, I have one in the works right now. Awesome. So great. Thanks very much. God bless. Yeah.